Hi, I'm Leonard Suryajaya. I grew up in Indonesia and now live in Chicago. I make artwork that is fantastical and bursting with colors and patterns using humble everyday objects and people. I think a lot of the aesthetic that I employ nowadays come from this drive in trying to figure out a sense of order amidst chaos. Being curious about trying out different combinations, reimagining different possibilities, and also just wanna see new perspectives to learn, but then also to teach myself. The use of colors and patterns is so important in my work because to me, it kind of relates to the aesthetic of my childhood. Growing up in Indonesia, colors are everywhere, plants are everywhere, it's always hot, it's always loud, it's always happening. It can get very chaotic, but what stood out to me is the colors of the place, the patterns, the way that specific patterns are being used in everyday life. And I think just looking at Indonesia's history, where there were a lot of different cultures that come across Indonesia and they settle and then they leave. So even in the traditional pattern, there are a lot of influences from different cultures. And I think using that same mentality, I also ask myself, how could I use specific experiences in my life and translate it into an aesthetic that communicates my specificity as an artist? I mostly photograph with a large format view camera. Using that process, it really dictates the sort of images that I could make because the view camera is not as flexible. I can't just like carry and then shoot around. So what I do is I set the camera down. I begin with making a commitment with myself to say, okay, I will work with this frame. And after I make that commitment, I think of the frame as my stage. And I fill it with things that I want to include. I put colors, patterns, and all of the props and people. I like to arrange things and make it look nice and in order, but then understanding that no matter how much control that I put in, I'm still just a small entity in this universe. So that's when I allow disruptions and improvisations and also just, mistakes or accidents to come and take over. So for example, the photo with my mom. In that photo, my mom is standing next to a photo of herself 7 years younger. In the photo of her younger self, that is the only frame with her eyes being wonky because that was the very first frame that I took, and I think my mom was not ready for the flash. But to me, that is like the most special frame out of all of the photographs that I took of her that day because she doesn't really care about how she looks or how perfect she's coming across. So to me, that is the most special photo just because it really shows my mom and her being there for me. The easiest way to answer that question is I take inspiration from life. Sometimes when I travel, I see something interesting, or I see other people, and I get a sense of energy from them. And that's how I usually start to create my plans for making of photographs. I feel like just from my experience of growing up in Indonesia and how when I was born, I was not necessarily considered a full citizen because of my Chinese background. So being in that place of uncertainty and then also feeling like I was unseen, I became really curious about different ways of seeing things in the world. I became curious about other people's viewpoints, other people's faith, philosophies, and also interests. So that really became my drive in wanting to learn about other people, about other cultures, and I use it to find a sense of understanding of who I am as a human being. Taking inspiration from life feels like the best strategy because I don't want to read books and try to create a photo from reading books because I would rather just go walk outside than trying to like find inspiration from just being still and sitting down. Heartbreaks, my sadness, my anger, my happiness, my joy, those are kind of the things that I also want to be able to like put into a photograph to make it real. I didn't start photography until I was 20 years old, and I'm 34 now. So then, in my third year of university, I started taking art classes and photography classes. And I remember at that time, Diane Arbus, Kathy Opie, Sen Kwang Chi, those were the artists that really resonated with me because their work just feels like I have a place in their work. Like as a human being, when I look at their work, I feel like, oh, I can be one of these subjects in their work. And that's when I feel a sense of freedom and power. I think nowadays I follow artists that I have met in person and become friends. That's kind of like the best way of meeting an artist and starting to follow their career just to see how we all grow together. So right now I'm in the process of creating a public sculpture and a public installation in Chicago. Just from working on these projects, I really feel like I am just learning. At this point, my photography practice is kind of the second priority, just because I feel like I'm so solid with making photographs that this challenge of creating public art is really the challenge that I want to take on. My dream is to be able to use my time and energy in my life doing something creative. I want to occupy my mind, my time, my effort into projects that fulfill me in a creative way. So that's my only dream and hope. When I started being able to create my own photographs, I started by asking myself, what changes do I want to see in my life? And what are the things that cause me the most fear? So that's when I start trying to figure out visual representations of the things that make me feel uneasy as a way to gain a sense of power over my thoughts and my fears. Trauma, but then also the experience of growing up in Indonesia with sounds, the colors, the patterns, and also the complications socially. That's where I attribute my use of full impact, a lot of things, a lot of colors, aesthetic. Just because to me, it also communicates the complexity of my life. I feel like in my life, I never have the privilege of having just a simple, normal life where everything is easy and tidy. That's why I don't make photographs that are simple and easy and tidy. Yeah, I just want to be true to who I am and where I come from, and also, this is also the natural way that I think. So my latest series, I call it Parting Gift. I started Parting Gift last year, just as a way to like say goodbye to quarantine blues. So Parting Gift to me is this body of work in which I re-experience the world again after it being reopened, but using the new perspectives that I gained in the pandemic. It just happened that my sister also got married last year. It's just such a wonderful coincidence because it allows me to explore specific events in humans' life that are considered as important. But my big questions in this body of work are about family, marriage, mortality, death, friendships, belonging, place, and culture. So that's kind of like the loose guidelines that I'm creating for myself. When I went for my sister's wedding to Indonesia, that was the first time that I went back to visit my family in 5 years. Because prior to that, I was in the middle of my immigration process to get American green card. So then in those times, that's when I started taking photographs of my friends. I think my family is really proud to see their photos everywhere. I only saw my family once a year during winter break from university. And when I went back to Indonesia, I told them like, well, I need to practice. I need to make photographs. If you want me to get good grades in my classes, you better sit down and help me with this because I need to learn how to light. I need to learn about what to do and how to make things good. So I think to my family, making photographs is like spending quality time together. They get to see me in action. They get to see me being happy and animated and focused on my goals, and they're just happy to be there. Because otherwise, we just sit down and watch TV and everybody's on our phones. To me, that's not quality time. So I think with that perspective in mind, I think when they see themselves all over the world, it just reminded them of the time that we share together and the bond that I share with them. Those are my friends and my partner, my family. So all of those eyeballs I took with my macro lens. So I took a photo of each individual eyeballs and then I blend them together. Now seeing the result, it feels very monstrous. It feels very exciting and silly, but still very inviting. Because they're weird, but then they're also very pretty with the twinkles in those eyes. I want to be able to see my photographs supported by my family and friends. So that's my way of making it happen. I think it's so wonderful being able to like take over the city with like photography. I was very, I don't know, amazed with just all of the festivals that's going on that is really putting forward photography. Because I think what's really awesome about this festival is that the artwork occupies shared public space. It's not just in a convention center or a gallery. So that to me as an artist, it's amazing because I make work with my people, and being able to show them and let them occupy public spaces and allow interaction with people here, that is so special. because that's truly like the goal of why I make art, so that I can be this connection between people. That's my hope, and I'm just so thankful for all of your help and all of your support. All I did was send all of my files and everything is already prepared for me and installed. So that's such a generous ways of sharing creativity, and it just makes me proud to be a part of this.